Now, how to challenge the core member when they don't respond. And the next question, different approaches to challenge the core member. I have some ideas, but is there anybody here who would like to offer some? Lots of you have experience. So help me out here.
Which one do you want to start from the top?
Yeah, how to challenge the core member if they don't respond, and different approaches to challenging the core member.
I think you have to be, I can talk about the mic, it's okay. Yes, I can. You have to be able to practice some tough love here, so you have to be able to basically corner them and make them feel uncomfortable. We are their friends, but we also are accounting here for their accountability. And one way you're going to get that when they're resisting is to press forward. And sometimes they're going to feed you a line to try and distract you, and you have to say, never mind that. And you go back to the question that you want to have answered, to the detail you want to have presented, and make them do something with it, make them recognize it. So you really got to be hardline with them, and you have to push on it. Maureen's really good at it. She's one of the top, that's how I know.
I think I'm being picked on here.
Not at all.
So, Richard, would you?
Oh, I can use my teacher voice.
Okay.
I think a particular instance, I think you have to go with how you're feeling in a situation. But if there's a consistency and a repeat and a repeat and a repeat, whether it's dodging or trying to redirect the conversation, or just flat out, I don't want to talk about that particular issue. What we've done in the past is bring it to the core member what you want in a circle, because if you're not answering these questions, then this isn't a circle. You've already decided you don't need our help. So are you saying you don't want us? And you leave it, that question, open-ended. And most times they'll change their tune because they really do want a circle, they just don't want to talk about stuff. But sometimes you found, yeah, they really don't want. And that should be your clue that it's time to prepare for the painful side of posing a circle, because you've been dismissed. But I guess the point was, you put it to them, well then what are we here for? We've tried things like, cutting back, maybe taking 2 weeks off or something like that, see if they really want it. But I didn't find that was particularly helpful in the long run, because once it came to that point, you should have realized, yeah.
That's really good. And add to that, Richard, is the important part when we do our covenant. What are they agreeing to in that covenant, right? And what are we agreeing to? If they are agreeing to share about their risk factors and talk about their risk factors, et cetera, then we go back to the covenant. Have things changed? Do you not, do you want to change the covenant? And then there's a discussion again. Can we go along with what they want? And we should be, and I'm probably failing that myself, we should be reviewing the covenant at least every 6 months and making sure that they're on track. And now, and I think many of you know, when I'm interviewing fellows now, it's very, very different. One of the main questions I ask them is, are you at risk to reoffend sexually? And if they say no, I say, great, you don't need a circle, right? And that changes things. Well, maybe, but I did programs in the institution, so I'm doing pretty good. And I say, well, great, then CoSA isn't for you. We have limited resources involved. Well, you know what, in certain situations, yes, Maureen, I could see myself reoffending. So it's all in bringing them back to that and in what we have in our covenant. So the covenant's really important, what we decide in the very beginning, what they agree to and what we agree to. So, Anita.
With the experience that I've had, sometimes there is that resentment initially or that uncomfortableness because they have to disclose a lot and they don't trust you. But once that trust is established amongst you, you can tell from that day forward, things change. So sometimes it's a matter of developing that trust, that they trust you. They've come from an environment where they can't trust anybody. And that they really, once that is established, if you can't get the openness, I agree that, you've got to look at what are we doing here, and I could use my resources could be used much better at that point. But the point is that sometimes it just takes that crucial time when suddenly they go, yeah, I know you're here for me. I know that you're trying. You're not just paying lip service to this. And then that's when you really see a flip in the group. There's a special day. You can actually chart it, that when they trust you and open up like that. And if not, then it's like what the gentleman said before, don't spin your wheels for nothing, but you can try that.
Thanks, Anita. Now, 2 people who asked that question, I don't know if you want to add anything to that before we go farther, or if that's helpful.
We're sort of experiencing that, yes, I'm self-monitoring and I'm doing a good job and everything's fine. So then you sort of say, well, okay, how was your day? Like, how do you push it further after that? So what do you need a circle for should probably help us. But
I don't know if you have the covenant. Yeah, I don't, and that they're fairly new, and I think I've been a little remiss in that, but I think we need to do a covenant, and I'll try to be part of that circle when we do. So what do you agree to? And that would solve probably some of the problems.
I think sometimes if we need to repeat what they've said and ask if that really is helpful for them, why they're resistant, just to repeat something they've said.
Thank you. Rudy.
I think something that has to be kept in mind as well is what are our expectations of the individual. If our expectations are higher than what they're capable of giving us or acknowledging to, you're going to get resistance because they don't know how to handle it. If you have expectations and they come back week after week after week and they fail, what are you reinforcing? You're reinforcing, I'm a failure, I'm a failure, I'm a failure. So you need to find some way of allowing them to get some wins under their belts so they can feel more comfortable sharing what they've experienced.
Thank you, Rudy. Father Mako. Father Mako actually has sat on the board of CoSA from its very inception, 2002. So he's listened to these and been part of it. So probably has some good advice for us.
I was just going to point out that whether it is from the covenant itself or probably day to day just from the statements and the comments from the fellows, that rather than challenges being based on or kind of molded as an external challenge, to look for something that in the prisons I look for when I'm talking with the fellows a lot is the idea of dissonance or cognitive dissonance. So if he's saying one thing but has earlier said another and they don't quite match, okay, then you bring that to the person and work out their own solution that they can kind of make these things match, or at least challenge themselves on why they don't match. Okay, so a covenant already expresses their best hopes. Okay? If there's something that's not expressing, elements of that covenant or that best hope, so that cognitive dissonance between what something that they've said or committed to before and what's happening in the present. To frame it in a way that's not external to them, but it's just their stuff and coming to learn to live with greater integrity.
I don't think we're going to discuss this one, except to say that when a fellow is suspended, they have up to 30 days to release them. And there's nobody from corrections here, so I can be honest, that's often a timeout. you know, they're just not getting along or not being cooperative. Linnea?
Isn't it up to 90 days?
No, a suspension's up to 30 days. So we're gonna see them out in 30 days. When the parole officer tells me, oh, I suspended them, you know, their attitude's kind of deteriorating, I know we'll see them. But if they breach their conditions, if they're charged with the breach of their conditions, they have up to 90 days. So we will hear within the 90 days. That means that they charge them with something new. They go to the parole board. The parole board makes the decision, forget it, this isn't a new charge. Or often they add conditions onto their already existing, whatever it might be, LTSO or probation, whatever it is. So normally I would always keep the circle open. So Steve, really you don't have that option because it's 90 days and we keep the circle open for that long. So just so I'm only teasing you, Steve. But basically we ask the volunteers, I usually say the circle is still open unless they get new charges. I'm going to say, I don't know, 95% of the time, they're back out within the 90 days. Very rarely are they not, but they could have new conditions added or what have you from the parole board.
Maureen, the question that I have is, CoSA stands for Support and Accountability. Now, the accountability part, is that only on the sexual, you know, like for example, if our core member says, no, I'm not capable of reoffending physically, or I don't have any interest in there, is that time to shut down that circle, or is the accountability, does it expand into other areas of life?
That's a good question. It's making me think. Accountability is in the circle is in all areas. They need to be accountable when they're coming to the meeting, that they show up on time, all of that. But if they're saying that they couldn't sexually reoffend in any way, then there would be no need for a circle. But basically, when you work with them around that, what are they doing with their thoughts? What has happened to their deviancy? So it's more than a victim or not being able to hurt anybody physically. What are they doing in their head? Because there's a lot of other ways of offending. As you know, a lot of them have issues with pornography, right? So, but if they say they're definitely not at risk and they're not struggling with any sexual deviancy and they never could, again, then we would probably close the circle. Does that make sense? Lynn?
Just because they're not capable of sexual relations or whatever, they could still sexually reoffend through touching, couldn't they?
I mean, I think of the one that we almost closed, and I can talk about him because he died a few years ago. And he had a circle for 8 or 9 years. And he said that over and over. We knew differently. We knew he had issues. Well, anyway, he went into a home. He wasn't old. He went into a home because he had real physical disability. And he wasn't in the home more than, some of you, I don't know if there's anyone here from that group. No, I don't think so. But the house actually...
Rudy.
Oh, Rudy, yes, right, Rudy, you were. And the care home actually phoned us because he was inappropriately grabbing at some of the nurses in inappropriate places, you know. So, and we had thought for a long time that he was doing well. So sometimes it's really hard. I don't know about you, but I know the things I've struggled with since I was 20 years old, I'm still struggling with, right? You know, if we have a tendency to this or that. Mark's laughing, so I don't know. But isn't it true? So if you're sexually deviant and have those issues, there's also the memories of them. There's the memories to deal with. And often when guys are really honest, that's what they'll say. They might go along 6 months or a year, and then all of a sudden, it's like a memory or a flashback of their sexual deviancy or sexual offending. So that's a part of them, right?